Hey everybody, welcome
Hello.
to week 4.
Supercharging your relationship to self and others. And what a glorious, and this is always a good time to know this, but especially this time of year.
This is the time. This is Christmas and Thanksgiving was over, but this Christmas time.
Yeah. And the New Year time, there's a lot of pressure this time of year.
People get really triggered this time of year. They get
Yes.
around the people that used to know them as how they were when they were younger, and they start acting that way, which is just crazy.
That is just, the most glorious thing of something that we share. So, we are ever changing. Our organs can completely rebuild themselves, and our blood completely changes in a certain amount of time. So the fact that people think we're stuck or we're one way is just insanity.
Yeah.
We get to recreate and transform ourselves consistently, and if you're not growing, you're kind of dying inside. So the fact that people think, an old dog can't learn new tricks and all these things, it just simply isn't true.
Our oldest dog learned the newest of tricks. Our folks in this program that are over 80 seem to do the most. We should introduce ourselves quickly.
Well, let me just finish
Okay,
this
finish your
thought, and then we can. So one of the coolest things that blew our minds when we discovered it is that your perception of yourself, nobody else has. Nobody else. So every single person that you know has a different perception of you than you have of yourself. So when we feel like our identity is fixed and stuck, it simply isn't, because if you know 1,000 people, there is 1,000 different versions of you out there. Isn't that just wild? And so what that really gives you is the freedom to choose who you want to be and how you want to create yourself. Now, I love the analogy of when you travel overseas, you're in a different culture, a different country, nobody knows you. You get to be whoever you want. And that's why so many people have so many epiphanies when they're overseas, when they're traveling, or, they get to transform themselves and they come back different because they suddenly realize the shackles of their identity is not attached to them. And so it's easier to shed it and be completely changed. And I want to give a perfect example of that. So you have a visual example. But, so many, in the Vietnam War, so many of the vets there got addicted to heroin. And, heroin, as so many people know, is one of the most addictive substances. And it's very hard to kick it once you're addicted. Yet, when they came back,
they were really concerned they were going to come back, and there was going to be this massive opium and heroin epidemic in the United States because so many of the soldiers in Vietnam were smashing it in all the opium dens.
Yes, and then when they came back, their environment was completely transformed. None of the triggers that had them want to do the opioids and the heroin were there, and so most of them were no longer addicted. Now, isn't that fascinating and interesting? So when you change your environment, you can completely change your habits and your identity. So that's what we're, especially me, I'm super excited about that. And on that note, we will introduce ourselves.
But your identity, what you're saying is your identity is not fixed. You can create and you can get to totally design who you are from moment to moment. And no two people see you the same, which is liberating when you think about it.
Totally liberating.
You're not stuck by how you think your parents think you should be, or how your ex-partner, or how even you think you should be. You can thrive. But this kid,
but when you understand the story, I get so excited about this. When you understand the story, like a teacher or someone important to you, your dad, someone called you fat as a child, and then you lived into that identity for the rest of your life to this date, it doesn't mean that that's your future, right? It means it's a story and an identity that you chose, even though it felt subconscious and even though that's not what you wanted, that you chose to adopt and now is carried into your life. But that isn't who you are. And that's what we're super excited to talk about in this in this little exciting discussion that we're talking about today, and how to supercharge your connection to yourself so that you get to create what you're wanting in your life experience, and then also supercharge your relationships so that you can restore love and affinity with anyone. Yeah. So, on that note, I am Kate Austin. I am a strategic intervention coach with my master's in neuro-linguistic programming. I am obsessed with all things mind and the power of the mind, and how you can achieve the miraculous when you set your mind up or you're in a community that supports your vision. So that's what I'm all about. And this glorious human being right here.
Did you say you were Tony Robbins trained strategic intervention coach?
I said that first. I didn't say it was Tony
I thought
Robbins
you just
trained.
said NLP.
But
she also is really, what Kate's really good at is helping people identify their sabotages and their upper limits of how good they're willing to allow things in their life, and almost listen them into their greatness. And we're going to talk about listening a little bit further in this, because today's conversation is our fourth conversation of this summit, this wellness summit that we have, and the power to change. And so a lot of what we're talking about inside of your identity is one of those big levers to pull to have the power to change is your identity, and the identity that you get to create in the moment for yourself. So I'm Paul Green. I do make movies and I make music, but I'd say because I have a functional nutrition degree, and along my journey into this was I used to do men's health fitness covers and men's journal covers and modeling stuff. So I really learned how to take care of my physique from a vanity, but it was also how I fed myself and my family, I guess, was taking care of my physical body. And then my dad got ALS 10 years ago and passed away from it, and that is Lou Gehrig's disease, and that really put us on a pathway of trying to understand how the body deals with heavy metals and toxins, and what causes neurodegeneration, and not just with Alzheimer's, or not just with ALS, but dementia, Alzheimer's. What is diabetes? What is type 3 diabetes? And so it put me on a trajectory of really trying. My why is to have other families not have to go through with what we did with our dad, with my dad. And had we learned earlier about heavy metals and how to detoxify his body, we could have started that way sooner, and most likely would have avoided what took him out, which
saved his life.
Yeah, had we. So what we're trying to do is introduce you all to some life-changing concepts. In some of the earlier ones, we did talk more about some of the mechanics and of health and well-being and how biochemical stuff. But today, we're really going to dive into this world of relationships. And I've worked with David Data. I've had some really profound teachers. My teacher, Kathy Martino, also, and Kate has spent some time with
Bruce Lipton
and Joe Dispenza.
Yeah.
Kate's done we've both done a lot of interesting work in the realm, and I did some tantric training back in the day with Alex Vartman. And so we've always been really curious.
And 2 years communication program.
The 2 years. We did
We've done a lot. We care about this topic deeply.
We do care, because the quality of your life really is the quality of your relationships.
1,000%.
And so you can have all the money in the world, even all the health in the world, but if you're all by yourself, how do you enjoy it?
Actually, I'm going to counter that, because if you are all by yourself, your health will decline. So much of our health
and longevity
is connected to others. Life is here to be shared. And, if we think about our great ancestors, they lived in tribes, they lived in communities, they lived together, they did things together. Families, babies were born in the home and people died in the home. It all happened together. And we're so far from that now. And it's like
everything's in a box.
Individual.
You're born in a box.
Let's put the old people away. We don't want to see that. We don't want to see death. Births can't be done at home. It's dangerous. And it's like, no, that's what's been happening from the beginning of time. And yes, did people die? Of course. That's life. But it's like we're so afraid of what life is, and we're so disconnected from the the miracle of life being born into the home, and the miracle of death and what that brings. Understanding death in that way truly brings life, because we no longer get complacent about what it is to be alive and what it is to have life and to have, air breathing through our lungs and our heart pumping. Like, that's what matters. And, we get so caught up in these little menial things that just don't mean anything. They don't matter. They don't matter. If they're not going to matter on your deathbed, do not spend more than 5 minutes worrying about them right now. So anyway. So
during this next, 30 minutes or so, we're going to cover not just, because it's your relationship, supercharging a relationship starts with your relationship to yourself, to that voice in your head. And so restoring, having the ability to restore love and affinity to anyone at any time starts with getting connected to that voice in your head. And what voice?
That voice.
The one that's
the one that just said what voice.
Why are they doing that? And so not only like learning how, becoming aware of that. Do you have a critical voice in there? Do you have a voice in there that's loving? Do you have a voice in there that is nurturing? Or are you beating yourself up all day long? Because it's really hard to be kind to other people authentically, unless you start by nurturing and taking care of yourself.
If you're unkind to yourself. And I want to say this because, especially when I speak to mothers or people that are very connected to family that they love, and it's like, if someone spoke to your child or your mother the way that you speak to yourself, what would you do to them? And some people are like, I would kill them. And so it's like, and that's how we get along, thinking it's okay to speak to ourselves that way. And it simply isn't. No. And we think we'll overcompensate by loving others so much. But it's usually coming from a place of needing that love ourselves. So we desperately love people, hoping that they'll give some back.
That's truth right there.
That's not unconditional love. So you cannot love truly and authentically unless you can be kind and generous to yourself. Now, that's going to trigger some people, and let it trigger you. I am saying let it trigger you, because if that's triggering you, like, I love this person, and even though I'm mean to myself, no. I'm telling you, it's not fully authentic, because you have to know how to love yourself. So if you're triggered, fantastic, beautiful, wonderful. I love that, because it means there's something to look at here. There's something that you need to disrupt in order to have your love be fully realized and authentic. And that's to start looking at yourself and start looking at how to love yourself. So no, don't stress, because we're going to give you some surefire ways on how to do that. That's what these talks are about, is actionable steps that you can take into your life immediately. So we're going to focus this first little bit on you, and then we're going to move on to your loved ones right after. So stay all the way to the end. You're going to get actions and steps on how to do this the whole way.
Yes, and in this first part too, like, so you're beating yourself up can raise cortisol, and can actually cause some weight gain, can cause your body to hold on to weight to defend itself from you. And so this self, having to, learning to nurture and learning to restore and to prioritize yourself and this relationship is a great beginning to a foundation of well-being and feeling energetic. Because how would you have energy if you were constantly in defense to your own voice in your head? And it could be a critical parent's voice up there judging you, saying you're not good enough, or you're too loud, or you're the quiet one, or you're the fat one, or you're the shy one,
the awkward one. You're physically like clumsy, or all of these things we get fed as a child, and we believe them, and it simply isn't true. And then our voice continues on that tire ride of negativity, instead of just loving what is and like building. So every pain point, we're not getting out of this life without pain. It just is.
Or alive.
Or alive. We're just not.
I love that.
It's just a fact, So you can either be completely consumed and swallowed by your pain, or you can use it as a platform to rise from. Now, no matter, even if you've been a victim your entire life, chosen, and I know it doesn't feel like it's a choice, but it's a choice to be a victim, you can change that at any moment and use all of that pain and suffering to stand on as a platform and rise, and often help so many other people along the way, especially when you've suffered, so suffering is communal. Like, this life is you're gonna have your fair share of suffering.
Life is pain, Highness. It's my favorite. When the Princess Bride, when she pushes him down the hill, and he screams, "As you wish." She's like, right before that, he goes, "Life is pain, Highness." Anyway,
so
some of you people will get that and love that. I've lost 90% of you, but that 10% that got that, it's worth it. Did you lose track? This identity thing that happens when you're young, if someone calls you a name too, mm-hmm. some people try to overcome that, mm-hmm. and that becomes their identity. And what we're here to share with you, some good news and some maybe bad news, the you that you know yourself to be might not actually be who you really are. Ooh. Who you really are is so much greater than your story that you're trying to overcome, survive, or fix, or change, or any of that. Mm-hmm. And so often some people, you might be 50, 60, 70 years old, and your whole life you've been living this identity that might not be who you truly are. Mm-hmm. It might be just you trying to survive something that happened to you. Mm-hmm. And so your whole life you create all these habits, all these ways of protecting yourself, even these personas to be outgoing and get love back, but it might not be who you are. Mm-hmm. And Kate and I have a year-long journey, and a big part of that journey is you discovering and creating who you are. But doing it from a place of power, and of course we use our past as fuel, but not as something to fix or change or even overcome. And so in this, Kate dealing with the subconscious mind, Kate has a really great insights into that, and I deal with a lot of the physical stuff. And relationships, which we're talking about today, is another pillar of our 3 big pillars of our year-long alchemy method. And so some of the ways that you can nurture yourself and come into this really raising your, you have this your awareness to your inner guidance system and raising your intuition. There are some practices, some self-love practices that you can do.
And I want to address self-love because some people think it's selfish, but it's totally not. We're in a very fast-paced life these days. We consume the same amount of information in one day that someone did in an entire lifetime 100 years ago. It's a lot for the brain to deal with. Kidding. So you have to counteract that. And unfortunately, so many people do it by blogging out, scrolling, or doing Netflix marathons. Now that's just gonna prime you the wrong way, freeze your brain, literally numb your brain out, or they do it with alcohol or drugs or things like that. Yeah. Pain meds, whatever, right? So it's like numbing out food. Yes.
For sure.
That numbing out is not self-love. It's not a way to take care of yourself. If someone's like, oh, I just need to watch a Netflix marathon. That's not loving yourself. It might feel relaxing, but your brain's being overstimulated continuously. So a couple of very easy ways to start practicing self-love and to start quietening that mind. So a great one we recommend very highly is walking. Very simple. Anyone can do it. Pretty much anyone. And if you can't do it, there's ways to start making sure you can do that. But the way to start is by taking a few steps, right? So walking, especially after you've eaten a meal, it's going to lower your blood sugar levels. It's going to lower cortisol. It's going to bring feelings of dopamine and all sorts of great things. So walking...
Yeah, and walking also, this does a powerful thing with your eyes. There's some really cool studies. Like, it takes you back to how our ancestors would take in their environment, and they would like see the mountains and they would see the trees. It gives you a sense of identity. And so being inside in your box, looking at your screen or your phone, there's no identity there other than some fake identity that you're being compared to. But you go out into nature, you see the birds, you hear things, you're engaging, your skin is taking in vitamin D if it's sunny, the wind, it's all giving you a sense of placement in this world and identity, and allowing you to know who you are in relationship to something real. Now you're inside your house, the people are real, but the most folks engage with an artificial world, which is on their phone, or they live these lives of romantic movies, or they're watching social media and comparing. So not walking also does this, triggers this part of your brain to give you a sense of identity from nature.
And if you want added bonuses on there, take your shoes off and walk on grass or sand or dirt. Like grounding, like taking away the barriers between the earth and us, actually is known to chemically restore our body. So grounding literally gives you health and vitality and energy back, because we used to all just sleep on the ground. We were grounded all the time, and now we have concrete and shoes and all these things stopping our connection to the earth. So take off your shoes, walk in the grass, walk in the dirt, the mud, water, sand, whatever. Walk with your feet on the ground. So that's an extraordinary way of self-love and bringing energy, vitality back into your body.
Yeah, grounding completes the electrical circuit, and it actually reduces inflammation. So if your feet don't touch the ground, you're going to be very high strung, and you're not going to, just like in your wall socket you have a ground that's connected into a rod in your house that goes into the earth. And so if you, like, we walk around with our shoes and we're not grounded, actually touching the dirt or the grass. So try to make even if it's cold, get that, and you'll actually experience a reduction of inflammation in your joints and in your body, and blood pressure goes down. Woo! Just the science of grounding is really exciting and fun. So check out ground. That's also self-love, self-nurturing.
Yes. Now another great one is to sit and write your thoughts, like brain dump onto a page. You don't need to be able to reread it. It doesn't need to be poetic. It can be blah, blah, blah. Or I don't know what to say, but my head is like messy and just so whatever comes into your brain, dump it on a page. It is therapy that is free, and it is extraordinary. And you can be angry, you can be expletive, you can say things that you would never want anyone to hear, and if you do that, just rip out the pages afterwards and burn them safely in a sink or somewhere where it can be done safely, right? But get brain dump onto your page, and we call this subconscious flow writing. So you're literally getting it onto a page. It's a wonderful thing to do first thing in the morning, but do it anytime that works for you. This is a form of self-love, and that way you can actually start reading what the voice in your head is telling you, and so you can start to disrupt these thoughts. You can start, as you're writing it, you can start to be like, hey, that's pretty mean. Like, would you ever let anyone talk to, your loved ones this way? Like, why would you say that about yourself? And like literally have a conversation with the mean voice in your head, or the not nice voice in your head, and get curious as to why they want to talk to you that way. And now here's another concept. It seems weird, but the voice in your head is not you. It's a voice in your head. And you know how some people say devil on my shoulder or angel on my shoulder, like you have a good voice and a bad voice? You are neither of those voices. You are the person witnessing those voices. Now, I know this seems a little weird because it's like, oh, this is all wacky. But you are not the voices, because you can change the voice based on the people you spend your time with, the books you read, the television you watch, the food you eat, the environment you live in, all of this can be transformed, and therefore it transforms that voice in your head. So that voice in your head is not you. You are the person observing it. So then once you're aware of that, you can have some perspective, and you can change it and shift it very easily.
Yeah.
So brain dumping onto a page helps you identify.
And they can use the artist's way to do that. There's a great book by Julie Campbell that you can get, and she shows you how to do those morning brain dumps. So another thing you can do is take yourself on a date to nurture your self-love. And
it's a date by yourself.
Yeah.
It's not with anyone. It's by yourself doing something that you've always wanted to do. And that could be just a hike, a walk in nature. It could be going to an art gallery. It could be going to a pottery class.
Yeah, it could be a movie. It could be anything, a walk in nature. Just doing something where you're treating yourself like somebody who deserves to be loved. Like
treating yourself like you would a lover.
Yeah.
So
and another way is a paper book, not just your phone. Like you could sit in your bath, in your Epsom salt bath at night. I've given that as medicine to a few of our students in our year-long program.
Yeah, an Epsom salt bath at night, with some candles.
Some music.
That can feel like very loving and sensual and beautiful.
Chamomile tea.
Yes,
and a paper book, candles, and sit there in the hot bath with Epsom salt. And that's less than $1. I mean, maybe 30 cents for the Epsom salts, and the tea maybe another 50 cents. And that is some powerful medicine for yourself. And it could become a beautiful ritual as you're going to sleep at night too. So from there, though, you can't turn on your phone and start looking at people on social media. You got to go right from the bath into the pillow.
Yeah, and you can read a little paper book as you're on the pillow, and then drift off into a lovely sleep. But yeah, reading books that, also paper books that inspire you, that help that voice in your head, that teach you. So knowledge is everything. The more we learn and discover, the more we have to say, the more we understand, the more we can listen, the more we can see others' perspectives. So definitely reading keeps this gray matter growing and building and rewiring, and you're never too old to train your brain. And so reading is a way that really does that, and reading something that is not trash, that is going to expand your mind and elevate you. So important. So wonderful. So there are a bunch of and nature. Getting into nature as often as you can.
Yep, that's a self. We talked about that a little bit. And while you're out there, you could try to get a massage in nature. There you go. Try to find somebody in nature and say, please rub my back. Make a date with yourself once or twice a month or once a week, depending on your finances, or find someone.
Just walking to the beach, walking through the mountains, find a way that you can get amongst the trees, even if you're in a park.
Talking about massages, not paying for nature.
Okay. I was like, okay.
No, but there's actually student massage places that have students needing to get hours. So you could actually reach out to the massage schools around you, and they're very affordable because they need to get hours. So there's ways you could get a massage every week if you're a touchy person. And if you're not, you might want to look at why you don't like to be touched. There might be something to explore.
It's a disconnect in your body usually, which is something to look at. So
I know we have some don't touch me people on here.
So we're walking, especially after a meal, a bath, an Epsom salt bath, self dates, reading a paper book that expands your mind, getting into nature as often as you physically can, grounding, so taking your shoes off once you're in that nature and allowing your body to reconnect, massage, and subconscious flow writing on brain dumping onto a page. So there are a bunch of tools that you can take immediately into your life to really start to notice what that voice is saying, and to start shifting it to being a voice that inspires and encourages rather than beats you up.
Yeah, and in supercharging your relationships, we wanted to start with your relationship to yourself first, because it's like putting your oxygen mask on the plane first. Like, you do need to know how to take care of yourself before you can effectively help others. So that's the self part. There's a lot more there, which we go deeper in our year-long program, but we want to share now how a few really nifty things you can use this holiday that's coming up, or no matter what time you're
any
watching
time
this,
of the year,
to restore love and affinity with just about anyone. And we're going to give you a few of them. There's more, but these are just a few that we found work really, really well to bring things. You want to start there?
Yeah.
Woo, Kate.
Yes.
Kate's going to share the first one with you.
So, giving up your right to be right, even when you know you're right. Let that one soak in for a second.
Yeah, there's generosity in doing that, because you're like, you might can know you're right, and you give up your right to be right.
So you can either be right or you can have love. Because we all know that person that's righteous and right all the time, and you're like, oh, I don't want to be around them. Like, oh, they're painful. They have to prove their point the whole time. And then it just leaves everyone just like, ugh, like not at all wanting to have a conversation, to have, you don't want to even people stop even bringing up their opinions, because this person's just going to argue their way to being right the whole time.
Yeah.
Nobody loves that person. Nobody wants to be around that person. So even when you know you're right, sometimes the more loving thing is to just allow people to have their belief or their opinion, and say, okay, it's like, let's just agree to disagree. This is a fascinating conversation. This is what's beautiful about human nature. We all get to have a choice on what we perceive and believe, and that's what it is. So giving up your right to be right. Don't argue something to the bit of the death. Don't believe that you are right and righteous, because depending on your certain set of circumstances of how you were brought up, or the people you're around, or the TV you consume, or the news you watch, you're going to have a certain belief. Yeah. And it ain't necessarily so. There is nothing we can say that we know to be absolutely true except the fact that we die. There's no other absolute truths. And what was true 100 years ago is not true today. And what is true today will not be true in 100 years. Like this, we are constantly evolving. So give up your right to be right, because there is no absolute truth in anyone's belief.
Yeah, and in doing that, you become a learner, and then people feel seen, and they feel heard, and they feel like they feel loved around you, because you're actually learning from them, or you're giving up you can either be right or you can have love, because it's really impossible to be always like a Mr. Know-It-All, Mr. Right, and still have people, like, how people feel around you is the most important thing. Like, how do people feel when they're around you? And giving up your right to be right is a really great way for people to feel awesome around you, because they're like, you probably watching this, there's some people you feel really good around. Yeah. And you feel
they make you feel funny and fabulous and smart and wonderful.
And then there's probably some that you feel like turds.
Like dumb and stupid, and you can never say the right thing, and so therefore you stumble all the time, and you always say the wrong thing.
And you can't get a word in. And
yeah. So,
I actually know that feeling sometimes.
I'm a feisty one. So I want to from giving up your right to be right. There's another thing we teach in conscious communication, and it's called generous listening. And so generous listening is listening not to respond, but just to hear them fully. And so
to discover. So like when someone's speaking, we're often preloading our answer in our head. And often that answer is, how do we sound smart? How do we sound witty? How do we sound like we're educated? Rather than letting that person just share and discover, and then there might be something to respond, or you can just say, tell me more.
So that is a technique I'd love for you guys to take into this holiday period, or any period, right? If there is, especially, there's a lot of heightened emotions around here, or a lot of being around family members that you may not necessarily want to be because of whatever past you have had, or the way they've been and poor Aunt Maud always is complaining and it's like, oh, it's such a Debbie Downer to be around her. Sorry, any Debbies out there.
Or Mauds for that matter.
Yeah, or Mauds. So let's say Aunt Maud's there, and so if you sat down with Aunt Maud, instead of just avoiding her at all costs because you don't want to get stuck in the, a toxic loop of complaining, and just say, hey, Aunt Maud, what was it that you really wanted to be when you were growing up? Like, what really has you the most excited in this life or in the past, right? And then you let Aunt Maud actually talk about something that lit her up or that was exciting to her. And you let her talk as long as she wants to talk. And if she goes into complaining, just steer her back. Be like, oh, does that light you up? What's the thing that lights you up, though? Or what was that? Or you wanted to be a ballet dancer when you were young? Oh, but then I got taken away from it. Oh, but tell me about ballet dancing. Why you wanted to be a ballet dancing? What do you love so much about ballet dancing? And keep her on that track, even if it was torn from her or ripped from her and she wants to talk about the pain of it. Go back to the ballet dancing so she gets to say fully what it is to say. And if she needs to go fully into the story of how it was torn away from her, let her do that. If she keeps going back there, just let her do that. And then say, is there anything else? Even if she talks for an hour, I want you to be so generous that you will sit there for a second hour to hear if there's anything else. Because guess what? When people are allowed to share, and it's not you putting your opinions and your stories and everything on top of it, you're just being a container of generous listening for them. Right. They can transform in front of your eyes. And your relationship to Aunt Maud will never be the same. Right. Because I guarantee you, if you think that way, there's plenty of others that think that way about her. And then she's constantly being shut out and shunned, and then it creates her to be more complaining or more anxious or more angry at the world, right? So if someone just does that, that could be the trigger that completely transforms their life. That completely transforms her to being a more open, loving person and willing to listen to other people as well. So you could be that person for anyone if you're willing to be a generous listener for a very short space of time in the scheme of the time that we have.
And like what we said at the beginning is people only show up in your listening of her. So if someone is showing up and being, do you want to close that door?
Yeah.
It just keeps opening. There's like a ghost out there. If people keep showing up and being, annoying and nitpicky and edgy and it's most likely because you're listening for them to show up in that space, or there's an agreement of the group of you that, like, oh, here comes Aunt Maud again with her stories, and so she has no choice but to sort of live into what everyone's listening of her is and expecting. So listening for someone for their greatness, not for like how they were last Christmas or last year or last time you hung out with them. So it's really listening to discover frees you, sets them free from the prison of the projection of everyone expecting them to be a certain way, because you're just listening rather than like holding them there with your words.
And on that, something that's really powerful is if you're going to meet someone and someone creates them for you, but it's not positive, so whether it's positive or negative, then before you meet them, you will carry that opinion into the relationship. And so what we're asking you is to stop,
collaborate,
and listen.
Kate's back with a brand new invention.
But actually see if you can hold that to the side or say, hey, I haven't met them, so I don't, I'd rather like form my own opinion of them. Yeah. But to really then discover that person from your viewpoint rather than whatever experience this other person had, because maybe that other person met them on a bad day, because we all have bad days and we don't want to all be judged on when we're having a rough day. Or worst day, right. Exactly. So it's like we get to show up differently, but if we're being held, like we train people how to treat them, and if we're being held a certain way, then we'll show up that way constantly. That's right. Yeah. So it's a really important thing to be with someone who they are, where they are today, not who they were 20 years ago or how they were with this person or that person. People get to, forgiveness is the key to whatever, so.
Yeah, and I think that this ties into our third and final point, and we're going to wrap this up, is discovering someone's commitment rather than the words and the emotion they're sharing. So somebody, and these kind of tie together. If somebody comes up to you and they're complaining, they're like upset about something that's not right yet,
or angry, screaming at you, right?
And they're like this, or mad that the catering did something wrong. If you're able to look beyond the complaint and beyond the emotion and look for their commitment and say, oh, they're just committed that this party is perfect and beautiful.
This Christmas dinner is extraordinary.
Rather than you're just listening to them as a complainer and as like this angry person. You're like, wait a minute, what are they not saying? Like, what are they committed to? And if you can do that, that person will feel so seen by you and so loved by you.
And I want to give you an example of that, right? So let's say someone comes out and they're maybe it is a catering at a Christmas function and the caterer's got something wrong and they just start screaming at you, even though it's not your fault that the caterers did something wrong, or they feel like you ordered something, and so it's hard to not to react with the same emotion that you're getting. So that's why people get in screaming matches, especially around this time. Is that someone's screaming at them, it's very hard not to match the energy of that. But a beautiful way of combating, especially anger, is to really be like, hey, I can see that you're really passionate about this. So it clearly means a lot to you. So let's work this out instead of just getting upset about it, and let's find the solution so this meal isn't, kaput and lost. Like, let's find how we can turn this into something wonderful. I just want to give you a reference. Those holidays that was a disaster, everything went wrong? They're the holidays you remember. And then you can laugh about it or talk about it in a way. The holidays that was perfect and all the things happen right, they're gone. They leave your memory. It's the things that go wrong that generally create a sense of connection, a sense of power, a sense of disempower, whatever it is. It gives us something to stand on, to rise from, and a great story or something to laugh about later, right? So if you can transmute someone's pain and see it's their passion, or see what they're really truly committed to, even if they're complaining all the time, they're committed to something being wonderful generally, but they just don't know how to convey it in a way that is empowering for anyone, right? So if you can be the person to transmute anger, frustration, anguish, guilt, shame, pain, if you can transmute that for anyone,
you're a wizard.
Then you're a wizard, literally, and a love bringer. You're like an angel sent from above. So
what a skill to learn. What a skill to be able to take whatever someone's throwing at you and just be with it, and or be an alchemist with it and turn it into something of higher value. And the program that Kate and I take people on a year-long deep dive into all this is called the Alchemy Method, and it's a part of our Freedom Alchemist platform. And so you learning how to alchemize, if someone's screaming and yelling at you, learning one way to alchemize that into something of higher value is to listen to what they're committed to and listen to what they're not saying. And because anybody can get triggered, anybody can get violent or responsive or check out or shut down, but how many people can actually stand there and be a container and use these tools to transform an environment, transform a person with love? And that is something worthy of learning as far as I'm concerned. I certainly don't have that skill mastered yet. I have a long way to go, but I've come a long way from where I was to being able to be with things rather than just wish they were different or take off or run or hide or shut down.
Well, it's an infinite game, this one.
It is an infinite game.
I mean, we have met people that are masterful at this, and you feel so so
they can just
special
they can be
and
with anything.
glorious in their presence. Like, they just feel good. They feel so good to be around. And you feel so safe and so seen, you know. And so if this is it, like for me, if I become masterful at this skill by the end of my, like, you know, at some point in my life, and maintain that masterfulness with it, then I will have lived a life that is worth living. You know, it is that higher skill to have, that you can make anyone that comes into contact with you feel seen, heard, loved, and celebrated. Now, I believe I do that, but I'm a fire sign. I'm a fiery person, and I can do it in a specific way, but there is a level that I wish to achieve where it's like, like, doesn't matter, waves crashing, that you can be the container and that is unflappable, unshakable, no matter what. So, I mean, this is one tool in a toolbox full of ways to really have your relationships be extraordinary, and no matter how fractured or broken they are, they can be restored. We have so many testimonials of people reuniting with fathers they didn't speak to for 20 years just before their father passed, and then not living with regret, you know, of reuniting, you know, forgiving ex-wives, ex-husbands that had wronged them, and then and therefore then releasing all this weight because they're no longer holding on to unforgiveness. You know, being able to repair and restore relationships that are lost, or friendships lost, is the key to having so much of what you want. You know, you have the real estate in your brain is back to be able to do creative pursuits, for one, and you also have, you know, this sense of calm, this sense of well-being, like a new drive, a new passion, new love, you know, the ability to love again, to not be afraid to love again. Like, there's so much to it. So really looking at your relationships to yourself and to others is the key to having a glorious life. And so we do put a lot of energy. That's right. If you look at the 3 pillars of our triangle of what we teach, you know, it's mind that I do, body that Paul does, and connection to self and others. They are the 3 main pillars, and we feel like if you have these 3 pillars all connected, you can have or do anything in your life.
And the quality of your life is equal to the quality of your relationships. Like, it truly is. So learning how to dive deeper into that, and if you're just not meant to be alone. Mm-hmm. You're not meant to check out and watch TV. That is not living. That is not life. Mm-mm. So if there's somebody that you know you should call, just pick up the phone and see what happens. Isn't that more of an adventure than you know nothing's going to happen if you don't. So, and
even if they hang up in your
keep
face,
trying. You're like, all right, I get to work on this skill and do it again.
And like, something will have impacted them.
Doesn't mean
by the fact that you were brave enough to address it.
That's true.
Like, so even if they hang up in your face, then they have to live with, like, did I cut that off? Or like, or they have to be righteous about it. But there's something there that's going to trigger, rather than just ghosting, disconnecting.
Yeah.
You know, connection is everything, and it sometimes feels like the hardest thing you can do, but it becomes the easiest thing as you practice it, and the most rewarding. So, to wrap things up, we are committed to this world being a more connected, more glorious, more empowered, more healthy place where you do not have to live on medications, in pain, you know, disconnected,
alone,
shut off, depressed. Or
medication.
That isn't how these glorious bodies are designed. It isn't how life is meant to be lived. So we're committed to people having really, really juicy, glorious, wonderful lives. And so we have been in this game for the past half decade. We learned a lot over that time as to what works, what doesn't work, how to really motivate people. And from all of the, you know, we saw some people just achieve the miraculous and be extraordinary, and some people do really amazing things and maybe backslide a tiny bit. Some people just couldn't get off the ground. And so from understanding the personality types and what's there and what's missing and what's needed, we created an extraordinary program where we have teamed up with the #1 functional medicine team in America right now to guide people step by step into having everything they want in their life, when it's releasing weight, like getting off medications, having their health back, reversing disease, reversing aging, having relationships back in their life, being self-expressed, having the career they want, all of it. So it's all connected, and we've packed this into this 1-year program. So if you want 2024 to be just extraordinary, and you can do it yourself. You can totally do it yourself. It just might take a lot longer. We have weeded out, we've had hundreds of thousands of hours of programs and expensive things to continue our training so that we can handpick all the best things, all the best products, all the best techniques that we know works, as we've tested and tried it on hundreds of our clients. We have hundreds of testimonials of why it works. So we've created this program based on that. So if you want that extra, like you want to make it happen within 6 months to a year and really like have a life unrecognizable to yourself in the most profound, powerful way, then we invite you to book a call to see if it's a right fit. And we don't accept everybody. It's not for everybody. It's a specific type of program. So that's the reason we individualize it, and it's totally a bio-individual program. So that's why we jump on a call to see if it would work for you or if it would not work for you. So, then we have other things. If that won't work for you, we have a community that can support you and love you. So we're all about how we can help everyone. And there is a path for everyone, and we are out to help as many people as we can in our lifetime.
That's right. So whenever you're seeing this, there will be a link down below that you can click to, and there's a free gift we have for you. You can watch some training around something that might be interesting to you. There's a weight release conversation we've had. There's a longevity one and the relationship one, right? And those are the 3, yeah. And so that'll be. And
there's 3 more coming in the following week. So tune in Wednesday 10 a.m. if you want to jump into this and learn more.
Yeah,
and we're giving it all away.
And please share with somebody that you think that this might be just the sweet spot. It's Christmas time, so be generous, or whenever you're watching this. Yes. All right, we love you guys. Thanks for stopping by. And we'll catch you next week at the same time. It'll be between Christmas and New Year's is our fifth conversation in the Power to Change Wellness Summit. And we're really glad that you're here. You keep showing up. We have a lot of you here live with us, but some of you are watching this later. We see you, and we really appreciate you. And Merry Christmas.
Yes, if you're watching this at that time.
All right.
See you
Bye,
later.
everybody.
Bye.
Bye.